Why do most rowers hate 2K testing? Why do we go in with a plan, then the moment the race starts, we immediately fall off course? Why do we psych ourselves out before the 2K even begins? What's up, everyone? Kevin Leslie, and welcome back to a solo edition of the At the Thousand Training Podcast. And those are some of the questions that we are going to be answering today, right? We're going to be talking about 2K performance and 2K anxiety, right? Performance anxiety, the psychology of a 2K test. And then we're also going to dive into some of my favorite strategies that have literally worked this week with probably over a half a dozen athletes that I work with, right? And those are some of the things we're going to be diving into today because those are some of the things that are relevant in training circles today, right? Most coaches, right? It's February. Most coaches are providing 2K tests. A lot of athletes are doing regattas on the weekends to better see where they are and how their numbers are progressing. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about is helping athletes simplify and demystify the higher, trying to think of a way to say this, but the pedestal that we put 2K 2000 meter racing on, right? Because it's the number that we hear about all the time in this sport. We hear it from our teammates, right? It's the number we hear the most noise about throughout the boathouse. We hear it from our coaches because they use it for selection, race assignments, things like that. And we hear it from college coaches, right? If we are aspiring to go and often row at the college level. And right or wrong, right? It's just part of our sport, right? We are a sport that is centered very strongly around one number. And okay, that's the reality. So how do we figure out ways to maximize or best position ourselves for success with 2K performance, right? And that's some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. But before we get to that, this is episode 51. If you haven't gone back and listened to episode 50 with Tyler Nace, head coach, Cornell men's lightweight rowing program, and 2016 Olympian, stop now and go back and listen to that episode. This is Tyler's second time coming on. We spent the entire episode talking about training, mindset, and 2K strategy and performance. Literally the entire episode. And coming from someone like Tyler, who is literally one of the most savage athletes on the erg I've ever met, you can't get a better 60-minute return on investment in terms of 2K performance. So again, give that a listen. I think every episode, right, coaches and athletes should be listening to because you're literally hearing it straight from the source's mouth. And I don't think you can get that information anywhere, right? So again, I love every episode, but that one in particular, again, like the words that Tyler will, or the strategy leading up to a 2K test, his mindset, both before and during the test, how he structures each 500 meter segment to best position himself for success. And again, it's coming from someone who is faster than 99.9% of the people listening to this. But there's things in there that you can take, that you can, when you step back, you can apply to your own performances. Or again, whether you're just starting rowing or you're someone who is junior, senior in high school, freshman, sophomore, junior college, whatever it may be, there are things that you can apply to your own performances. With that, let's get started, right? So quick story here, right? So an athlete that I work with, right? We've been working together for a while. We took a little bit of a pause, right? I didn't see him as much in the winter and circled back around. I'm not going to give athlete's name or where they row, but sophomore athlete, where again, I have my things about sophomores and 2Ks, right? Do they really need to make it the all in, do they need to go all in on 2K performance as a sophomore? No, in my opinion, you just got to get better at rowing, get better at technique, get better at learning how to train, learning how to pace yourself. And the 2K will be a byproduct of that. But coming back to some of the things we talked about before, the 2K is something that we are hearing a lot about. It's commonly thrown around the boathouse. It's kind of like our status number amongst the team. So I get it, right? So this athlete, sophomore, has attempted a few 2Ks, but every single one, the same outcome was occurring. He would start out, he would go about just like a normal 2K, and then 400 to 800 meters in to the 2K, he would completely fall off the rails, right? Maybe sometimes he made it to 1,000, right? Maybe a little bit beyond, whatever it may be. But he would completely fall off the rails. And something that is a sustainable pace for him quickly became completely unsustainable. And just from conversations and talking about approach to the 2K, taking the weight that we put on ourselves off of our shoulders and just going about it just like any other piece, and really thinking strategically about each segment of that first half or first 3 quarters, he did his most recent 2K, and again, PR'd by, I don't even remember how much, right? And I say that, right, because that's been probably half a dozen athletes that I worked with over the last 10 days, right? It's been awesome, right? Kind of seeing scores and stuff like that. Now, again, I say that also with, I've had probably just as many athletes send me screenshots and they did the complete opposite, right? Completely fell off the rails and haven't had a test to kind of, make up for it, right? So I'm not saying this in the sense that some guy named Kevin is the messenger of great 2K performances, right? No, there's so many variables that go into it. But this athlete in particular, it was clearly mental, right? It was clearly their approach to the 2K and the weight that they were stacking on their shoulders that was inhibiting their ability to perform on the day. And that's something that we're going to talk about, right? We're going to talk about a few things, but I wanted to bring that athlete up because, again, it's just a clear example where it's not as complicated as we make it out to be, right? Blocking out the noise from the teammates, blocking out the noise from coaches that are telling you, hey, you have to be at this number, blocking out the noise from our parents who have never done a 2K in their life and don't understand actually how hard it is, right? And just staying in the moment and going in with a clear mind and executing your piece, right? So that's what some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, right? As you can know, or as you can tell, I get pretty passionate about these topics. They're fun topics to chat about, right? So right from the jump, right? 2K performance and 2K anxiety, right? So we talked about it a little bit prior, right? So again, I want to talk about the mental side, the psychology of the test, and then tangible strategies that you can then take with you throughout your next effort, right? Your next training or your next 2K attempt, right? So I'm going to try to keep this not too long of an episode, right? We're already a couple minutes in, but here we go, right? So 2K performance and anxiety, right? And again, I'm not a psychologist. This is not my area of expertise, but I have talked to, I don't even know how many athletes about the mental approach to rowing itself, and then stacking on top of that erg performances, right? And one of the things I really like to think about, or I really like to tell athletes is, again, and we talked about this a little bit a couple minutes ago, we put 2K on this pedestal within the rowing world that makes it appear like it's something completely different than what we do every single day we strap into the erg and perform a workout. We put it at this height that it is something that every ounce of our mental and physical energy needs to be catered to, right? And through that, we stack all of this extra weight onto our shoulders, mental, physical, emotional, all of this weight onto our shoulders. And then we go about that test. We try to climb that mountain of 2K performance with literally pounds and pounds of weight on our shoulders, making that climb 10 times harder than it needs to be because of where that 2K lies. And at the end of the day, and this is something that really, again, why I think the Tyler Nace episode, previous episode before this, was so valuable. At the end of the day, a 2K test is just training. That's all it is. It's training. You do the same thing every single day you arrive at the boathouse or the erg room and strap in and get ready to bring about your best effort, right? It's no different with the 2K test, right? We've all done hard workouts before. We've all emptied the tank at the end of a erg test or a workout, right? Even if it's just a normal workout, right? Like 5x1500. We've all gone about the approach to a certain distance, whether it's 2,000 meters or 5,000 meters, and strategically thought about our approach to that test. But when it comes to 2K, we set ourselves up for failure before the test even begins because we start to stack all this extra weight on top of our shoulders, right? That we don't put into a normal 5x1500, a normal 3x10, max effort workout, a normal 5K test or 6K test like you saw all fall. We go about it completely different. We're like, hey, I have to start out hot, first 10 strokes, and I'm going to settle into this pace. And then at 400 meters in, I'm going to make this move. And then I'm going to bring my rate up at 900 go. And then at 1,000, I'm going to do this. And then I'm hoping a coxswain's behind me and they're bringing this message to me right at the right moment, 900 meters to go, right? We bring all these extra things in that add all this extra weight. And at the end of the day, it's just training, right? And Tyler said it best himself, right? He said he used to have a lot of performance anxiety, right? And the moment he flipped it, the mindset to just training, again, like it's one of those things that really helps set him up for success. And that's what I want you to think about, right? Like we all know how to go hard. We all know how to perform to our best effort over the course of 5,000 meters or 2,000 meters. Why do we go about it completely different for 2K versus 5K or versus 1,500 or, 5x1500? So again, that's what you want to think about. It's just training, right? You warm up, you plug in, tension go, and you go about it to see what your best effort is, right? And then as you start to stack those wins and start to get really, really competitive or just really start to see improvements of, hey, this is a completed piece. I feel good about this one. Then you can start to take a little bit of a risk where it starts to then translate into more of 2K racing rather than 2K training. But 95% of the athletes listening to this right now, and probably everyone at the high school level, probably isn't at that level, right? Athletes like Tyler and other people who are prior Olympians or really competitive college rowers or whatever it may be, like, yeah, they can race it a little bit more. But for the majority of us, it's just training, right? So that's what I want you to think about, right? And the second layer to that is the psychology of the test, right? And I always kind of say, right, a 2K is literally just a combination of your fitness, your psychology, and your execution. And if you don't have all three, you're not putting yourself in the best position to truly realize an outcome that is the best representation of your fitness today, right? If you don't have all three, right? The fitness, the psychology, and the execution, right? You could be as fit as possible or as you ever been. You could be in the right mindset, excited, ready to rock and roll, but you could misfire the execution and be 16 seconds off of what could have been your true peak or your true representation of your fitness on that day, right? But we misfired the execution, right? Which I think is a massive one for the majority of us, right? We could be as fit as possible, which our prior training tells us, right? Our prior training is the best indicator of what a good 2K target is. We could execute just right or execute just right, especially in the first 500 meters, but we could completely take ourselves out of the mental fight 500 meters in because we didn't go in with the right mental approach, right? We completely let the weight of the 2K, we succumbed to the weight of the 2K, right? And we fell off the rails and didn't put together our best performance, right? That's another piece, right? So again, those are the two that I really want to think about today, right? The execution and the psychology of it, right? Fitness is prior training, right? If the numbers aren't telling you this is a good result or a good target to chase, you shouldn't chase it, right? Numbers don't lie. That's the beauty of the erg, right? The erg will tell you, your prior training will tell you, is this a good target to attack, right? To go for, right? Now, with that, I have a lot of mountain analogies, right? One of my favorite ones first, right? It's climb the mountain, right? And it's kind of just related to the psychology of a 2K, right? Climb the mountain. And the reason I started to think about it, right, is when I'm running, right? If I do a lot of running, used to do more running, right? And oftentimes when you're running and you approach an uphill climb, right? You could say cycling too, for those of you that love, cycling. When you're doing a uphill climb, you have no idea where you are, right? All your focus is centered on that or the top of that mountain or the top of that hill. Your eyes are straight there the entire time, and you're just going one foot after the other, climbing that mountain, right? And you have no idea what is on the other side of the mountain, in theory, right? You have no idea, but your entire focus is on getting to the top of that peak. And to me, that's the first 1,000 meters of your 2K. The first 1,000 is getting to the top of that peak. And through prior training, you should know with 99% certainty, I can get to the top of that peak because I'm at a pace that I know I can sustain for that first 1,000. And that's my 100% focus first half of the 2K. I want to get to the top of that peak, because what tends to happen is, and this comes back to the athlete that I was mentioning before, right? Where they psych themselves out of it before the workout or before the test even began, right? You could tell right away they're doing something that is uncommon for them, right? Where 99 times out of 100, they should be able to hold this split and rate relatively easily, with the understanding that they have another, couple minutes after, meaning the second 1,000. They should be able to hold this they should be able to maintain this speed pretty easily, right? Yeah, they're going to feel a little bit of fatigue. It's a 2K, this and that, right? But they should be able to get there, right? 99 times out of 100. But that one time they don't, it's usually, right? I'm going to stay on the psychology part, right? And maybe, something where preparation, things like that. I'm going to stay on the psychology part. It's usually because they psych themselves out. They started focusing on what's on the other side of that mountain, not I'm going to get to the peak by any means necessary. They started to think about what's on the other side. Once I get to the top of this, I still have 1,000 meters to go, right? Once I climb this mountain, I still have 5 miles to go till I'm at the finish line, right? If we're talking about running, right? And that's what I want you to think about, right? For an athlete, the top of the peak, right? That's the first 1,000. 99 times out of 100, because of good prior training, you can get to the top of that peak. And the one time that you don't is because you put the whole 2K before just chunking it up and attacking the first 1,000. And that's what I want you to think about. And don't get me wrong, when you get to the top of that peak, 3 things are going to happen, right? You have 3 options, right? It's either going to be a completely different mountain, and now you got to climb the same climb to the top of that peak, right? Knowing that you just put a lot of effort into the first climb. Yeah, that's probably not going to be the best second half, the one that you were dreaming about. You may get to the top of the peak, and now you have flat ground where, okay, you can start to catch your breath and get back to your speed, right? That's the second 1,000, right? I feel okay. Let me just hold this pace, right? I'm in the fight, third 500, ouch, but I can sustain this. Or you could get to the top of the mountain and see a fresh slope that you can ride down and start to pick up momentum to really carry you through that second half of the piece, right? Or really the third quarter, the third 500, right? You could get to the top of that mountain because you know that you can 99 times out of 100. And then once you get there, you're like, okay, I found my rhythm. I found my speed. Let me start to work it down, right? Let me start to go for it, right? And that's what you want to think about, right? And the top of that mountain may be a little bit variable, right? Sometimes it might be 1,000. Sometimes it might be 1,250. Sometimes it might be 1,500 before you can truly be like, okay, I can attack, right? But it's going to come, and it better be on the second half. It better be on the second half of that 2,000 meter effort, not the first half, because you know that you can sustain for that first half. So that's the one piece. Coming to the top of that mountain and then seeing that slope and really starting to attack, that's essentially what I call downhill rowing, right? So again, another hill analogy, right? The first one's to climb, the second one's downhill. And downhill rowing to me, and again, back to that podcast with Tyler, and he kind of mentioned it in his own way, which I thought was just absolute gold for athletes. But downhill rowing is essentially just negative splitting, right? It's just my fancy way of saying negative splitting. And the reason I kind of think about it like that is the same thing as downhill running, right? Again, another running analogy, right? When you're running downhill, you're starting to collect momentum. You're starting to build speed as you go, right? You're like that snowball rolling downhill or going downhill. And to me, the approach to the 2K is the exact same. You are starting out at a pace that you know you can sustain, right? Whether it's first 500 is a little bit higher, second 500 is a little bit lower, but still above pace, your target pace, right? 1,000 meters, you're making a move. Okay, 1,000 meters, you're starting to work it down and collect momentum as you go. That's downhill rowing. It's a negative split, right? I may be, as an example, I may be 2 above target, right? So if my goal is 8 minutes, I may be 2:02 for the first 500. Then I'm going down to 2:01 for the second 500. Third 500, I'm at 2 minutes. And then the last 500, I'm taking it home and I'm driving it, right? Again, whether that adds up to an 8 minute, I don't know, right? But that's what you want to think about, right? I'm collecting momentum as I go and I'm attacking the second half. I'm making the second half faster than the first half. And Tyler brought it up, right? He said, you have your conservative pace, you have your risky pace, and then I'm going to add this part, and you have your sprint pace, right? He didn't really say, call it sprint pace, but I'm calling it sprint pace, right? And the first 1,500 meters of your 2K test should be conservative, maybe starting to branch into risky, all in the preparation of your day is now decided by, do you have the capacity to drive it home and sprint? But a lot of athletes, they go out at their risky pace and they expect to sustain that for 2,000 meters. They expect to sustain that for 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, whatever their target is, right? Right from the jump. They're putting themselves under 100% of the time pain at their risky pace, rather than thinking about it as, okay, I can find this pace, right? Again, I'm going 8 minutes is my target based off my prior training. I'm going to start out at 2:02, collect my rhythm, find my speed, make this feel comfortable. 500 meters in, I'm going to go to 2:01, collect my rhythm, make it feel easy, make it feel sustainable. 1,000 meters, I'm at the top of the mountain. Now I'm going to start to work into my risky pace, right? Now I'm going to start to attack that split, right? I say, this is kind of coming from me, but I always say, make your money in the second half. First half is training. Second half is racing. First half is training. Second half is racing, right? And if you take Tyler's approach, first 1,500 meters is training. Last 500 is racing, right? But regardless of which one you decide, the majority of the piece, or at least the first half of it, is training, meaning 99 times out of 100, you know you can sustain that speed. That's it. And then your success for that workout or for that test is decided in that last 500 meters. You have a monstrous sprint, that's a great day, right? You really drive it home, right? Your goal was 2-minute splits. You executed just above pace and then settled into a good right at pace or maybe slightly below in the third 500. And then you rocketed it down to a 155, right? Ended up going, 754. I don't know, right? Just, again, don't quote me on the numbers, right? Amazing day. A good day is maybe, okay, executed the exact same 1,500. Didn't maybe have the same monstrous sprint, but I still had a really good sprint. Okay, maybe you went 756, 757. An okay day is, okay, executed my first 1,500 meters. Last 500, wasn't really able to didn't have the legs in me to really drive it home. Okay, maybe you just sustained, maybe a little bit faster in the last 100 meters. Okay, maybe you went 759 to 801, 802, right? Maybe just above target, which is fine, right? It's an okay day, right? It's not a bad day. But your ceiling, right? Your bad day, right? Say you didn't have the legs. You executed the first 1,500 and the last 500, you didn't have it in you, right? Your first 1,500 really taxed you for whatever reason, right? It's going to happen. Happens to everyone. And all you could do was sustain, maybe even just went up a little bit in the last 500, right? Your last 500 was slower than, your third 500 or even your first or second 500. And you finished at, let's call it 805, right? 5 seconds above your target. That's now your bad day. Versus prior to that, if your goal was 8 minutes and you went out way too hot, your bad day very well could have been 8:12, 8:16. So you're minimizing the downside by rowing downhill. You're setting yourself up where the moment or where your first 1,000 to 1,500 is scripted, where 99 times out of 100, you can get to the top of the mountain, then you can start to work it down, right? Then you can start to collect momentum. And the success of that day hinges on whether or not you have the sprint, which you can never guarantee, especially if, right? Or you can never guarantee on the day, right? Some days you're going to have it, some days you don't, right? Some days you have the legs in you to really push it in the last 250, 300. Other days you don't, right? Majority of the time, hopefully you're going to have it, right? Where you can either set yourself up for that good or that great day. One of those days you're probably not. But the number one way to guarantee 100% of the time you're not going to have that sprint is by doing something dumb that you can't sustain in the first 1,000 to 15 or first 500 to 1,000 meters, right? Flying and dying, going out way too hot and settling way too late. The decision's made for you. You can't go any further, right? You can't take it home, right? It doesn't work like that, right? You have a finite amount of energy and you're trying to use it in a way that best sets you up for success. So again, that's what I want you thinking about, right? For these 2K performances. How can you truly collect momentum, right? Take the psychology out of it, at least in the first half, and approach it just like training. 99 times out of 100, I can get to the top of that mountain. I can get to the peak. The second half is where the race begins. And that's where, again, that downhill approach is very, very valuable, because you know that this is a conservative enough pace where in that second half, you can start to make your money, right? You can start to collect that momentum, right? And then really positioning yourself in that last 500, 400, 300, whenever that move comes, whenever that you're ready, whenever you see the light at the end of the tunnel, you can go, you can attack. And that's what I want you thinking about. So again, a lot of stuff in here. It's that time of year, 2K testing on a monthly, if not weekly basis. And you have hopefully multiple opportunities to really groove in your speed. And as you get better at that approach, at these approaches, right? The mountain and then the downhill rowing, as you get more comfortable and more confident with these approaches, then you can start to take a little bit more risk, right? You can be a little bit more aggressive, but get momentum, get wins, walk out of that erg room feeling confident that, okay, this is a great representation of where I am today. Next time when I go to do it, I'm going to take that exact same script and try to build on it in the second half. Try to get a little bit faster. That's how you can squeeze out those PRs, right? That's how you can ensure that every time you strap in, it's a piece that's worth your time. It's a test that's worth your time. That's what I want you thinking about. So with that, long episode, a lot of stuff in here. I can go about this all day because this is one of those topics I'm very passionate about. I know a lot of you are too, so hopefully you're able to listen to it all the way through. Again, go back, listen to episode 50. If this is valuable to you, leave a rating, right? Rate it on Spotify, whatever. Rating, review really means a lot, really helps the show grow. And with that, keep erging. Let me know if you need anything, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.